UTMB is less than a week away, so it's time to discuss the men that are in with a shot at one of the biggest crowns in ultra running. If you've not seen my previews before, I usually like to talk about 5 runners I think you should pay attention to. Not necessarily because they're the top 5 runners in the field, but because there's some intrigue into how they may perform, and I tend to lean more into why I'm excited to watch them race, rather than an in-depth analysis of their training. With this one though, we're actually back to where it all began, as last year's UTMB preview was the first video on this channel, and if I was to go with 5 runners, I'd probably end up talking about 4 of the same guys again as last year. So to mix it up, I'm going to run over 3 individuals that I think have the biggest chance of winning here, and then touch on a few of the top Americans, Europeans and other internationals that you should be following. So if you've never followed this race before, or you need to know who's racing this time, hopefully this video gives you an idea of who to keep an eye out for. This year is also extremely wide open, with possible winners everywhere you look and no clear favourite, which for me makes it even more exciting than last year. We've got former UTMB winners, 9 of last year's top 10 returning, and 5 of this year's Western States top 10 attempting the double. So let me know your picks in the comments below, and let me know anyone I may have missed. Oh, and my women's field preview will be out in a couple of days. Anyway, let's jump into it. Every year it seems that Jim unlocks another piece to the UTMB puzzle, and last year was his best attempt yet with a 4th place finish, meaning he's now just 1 step off the podium and equaling the best ever American male finish. Much like my preview last year, a lot of the pre-race talk will be about how he's moved to the Alps, dedicating his life to this goal and building his racing season around UTMB. And whilst I think another year into this project of living and training like the Europeans will no doubt have improved his chances, his biggest advantage, at least over those that beat him last year, will be his freshness. As Jim walked away from Western States, reasoning that the Western States UTMB double was too much and it wasn't possible to be at your best for both in the same season. But both last year's 2nd and 3rd place finishers, Mathieu Blanchard and Tom Evans, are doing exactly that, having raced Western States earlier this summer. So with Kilian missing due to injury and some of the other big contenders having big races in their legs, is this finally Jim's year? I hope so. There's something incredibly endearing about following a man with so much confidence from dominating the faster American races, come to terms with the fact that he's not superhuman after all, and Jim has handled that humbling by doing everything possible to adapt, which is why I'm so ready to see him overcome those obstacles and remind everyone that he's up there with the very best. There is a slight question mark over his fitness though, as he pulled out of the World Championships due to injury and has been Strava dark for the lead up to this race, but his social media posts say that he's raring to go, so who knows at this point. Tom is coming into this one as the newly crowned Western States champion and a returning podium finisher with an impressive 3rd place last year. But that Western States win is now the biggest question mark for me, as many have tried to complete the Western States UTMB double win, but only 2 have succeeded, Nicky Kimball in 2007 and Kilian Jornet in 2010. And so now, more than a decade on, with the highest level of professionalism and competition the sport has ever seen, is this double still even possible? One argument might be that Kilian completed the Hard Rock UTMB double last year, and those races are even closer together. But I'd argue that the course similarities make it easier to train for success at both, as if you nail your recovery, then your mountain legs are already there. Tom will have been in an exceptional shape for his Western States win, with a massive focus on speed, but the difficulty with this double is that you not only have to worry about recovery, but then making a hard pivot in your training to focus on uphill running and hiking. However, if there's one runner that I'm confident can recover well and then make the necessary training adaptations, it's Tom. Anyone who's ever heard him speak will know that he has a very scientific and professional approach to his training. Plus, he's talked about this race now being a free hit, as with his Western States win, he's already smashed his goals and kept his sponsors happy, so he's planning on running aggressively and taking risks, and I'm very excited to see how that plays out. Petter Engdahl has been destroying fields in the shorter distance ultras for a while now, but is far less experienced over 100 miles than the other contenders. However, he's no stranger to running fast in the Mont Blanc Massif, having podiumed at the competitive Golden Trail Series Mont Blanc Marathon earlier this year, and having won CCC last year, breaking the course record in the process. And if you consider former CCC winners Tom Evans or Zach Miller possible podium contenders, then it's worth mentioning that Petter's time was over 50 minutes quicker than Tom's and over 2 hours quicker than Zach's winning time. I personally think Petter has what it takes to become the next big superstar in our sport. All he's really missing is a breakout win over 100 miles, and what bigger stage is there than UTMB? For me, the winner this year comes from Jim, Tom or Petter. A lot of what I've said about Jim could apply to Zach, and a lot of what I've said about Tom could apply to Tyler. Zach has made this race his primary goal over the last 5 or so years, and he's coming in fresh and following his best performance yet with a 5th place last year. Zach is also a fan favourite, and I love watching him race as he rarely holds anything back. Tyler, on the other hand, is known as a strategic runner that works his way up as others fade. Although he mixed that up at this year's Western States with an aggressive approach, and it paid off, finishing 2nd. But will that hard effort mean he's coming into this one tired, and will he revert to his smarter, move up through the field strategy? So to find out, I'd pay very close attention to what position he's in when the runners hit Le Contamine, as that should give us an idea of his game plan. If you watch my History of UTMB video, you'll know that Tim Tollefson is the most successful American man at this race, with 2 finishes on the podium, so don't count him out. He's perhaps not what he once was, but I'd love to see him remind everyone what he can do. Then the other Americans worth keeping an eye on are Western States top 10 finisher Jeff Colt, and seemingly everyone's dark horses, Grand Raid podium finisher Ben Demon and Jeff Mogavero. Then we've got the Europeans, and the 2 you should be paying close attention to are Mathieu Blanchard and Pau Capel. Mathieu finished 3rd in 2021 and 2nd in 2022, and on that occasion it took a Kilian Jornet course record performance to beat him. So for a lot of people, Mathieu is the favourite this year. He's had quite an interesting year of racing though, and I'm not sure the training blocks for Paris Marathon, Marathon des Sables and Western States will give him the necessary improvements to make the final step onto the top of the podium. But then again, he is a mountain specialist, so maybe with these improvements in his speed and fitness, he's heading back into his comfort zone with a bigger skill set than previous years. Pau Capel won UTMB back in 2019, but since then he's not seen quite the same success, with last year being particularly tough, as following a return from knee surgery, he DNF'd both Lavaredo and UTMB. He wasn't holding back though, so his aggressive race style is very much still there, and he led from much of the early race last year. So if he's now fully recovered from those knee issues and back to his 2019 best, expect to see him in the front pack pushing the pace. And while we're on former winners, 2016 champ Ludovic Pommeret is also towing the line. A few other notable Europeans. Firstly, there's last year's 6th place finisher Bernat Mamasol, who recently finished 2nd at Hard Rock. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, as long as his recovery has gone well, he'll have his mountain legs. Thibaut Garivier is also a CCC champ with a time closer to Peter Engdahl than anyone else, finishing 20 minutes quicker than Tom Evans. And he's no stranger to the big dance, finishing 10th last year. Then there's Germain Granger, who is a 2-time top 10 finisher here, with a 5th in 2021 and a 9th in 2019. Then finally there's last year's Lavaredo champ Hannes Namberger, who also has a top 10 finish here at UTMB with 6th in 2021. For me, these guys all come into play if the weather conditions are tough and the pace is slightly slower, as they all have plenty of experience racing throughout the year in the Alps. Then last but not least, a quick mention for a couple of the exciting runners from further afield. New Zealand's Dan Jones had an impressive 5th place finish at Western States earlier this summer and won Tarawera at the start of the year. He does seem to lack big mountain experience, but he could also absolutely be a bit of a wildcard here if he's better than we think at the uphill stuff. Jiazhu Zhao was the runner that led the first quarter of Western States this year, having aggressively pulled out a big gap on the first climb up the escarpment. He went on to DNF, so not the best strategy, and hopefully for his sake he's learnt from that. But for our sake and the sheer entertainment of it all, I'd absolutely love another early attack from him, as I imagine it would cause some chaos and throw a spanner in the works of the well thought out strategies of the top contenders. Does Jim go with him, for example, or do you let him go away and hope he blows himself up again? Big wildcard factor for me. So they're my men to keep an eye on in this race, and as I won't have time to make a full predictions video like I did for Western States, I'll just throw out my top 5 predictions here. 5th place, I'm going for Jim. I hope I'm wrong on this, but the slight injury worries make me think he falls off the pace from the lead in the latter stages, but hangs on for another top 5. 4th, I'm going Mathieu Blanchard. I just think he looked like he suffered a lot at Western States, and that sort of effort can take a long time to come back from, so I just don't think he'll have as good a race as last year. 3rd, I'm going Tom Evans. The Western States UTMB double win is not easy. As good as I think Tom is, I think the guys who have fresh legs and have built their season around UTMB beat him. I think Zach Miller will be the first American man to take another step up the rostrum and finish 2nd. He's fresher, with only the 80k at the World Championships in his legs, and that was a mountainous course, meaning his training has been mountain focused all year. This pick is definitely more picking with my heart than with my head, but I'd love to see Zach do it. That leaves Peter Engdahl to take the win. As I said, I think he's got what it takes to be our sport's next big superstar, and I think he's good enough to win here. That CCC course record is absolutely phenomenal. So there we go, men's field preview done. Women's preview will be dropping in the next couple of days. As always, let me know your picks in the comments. Remember to subscribe. I'll be back soon with more ultra running content. Cheers.